you for watching the Shikama Live Show with your host, Shikama. I hope everybody's having a fantastic time during these holidays. And we have a new year coming up really soon here. I didn't want to talk about this subject, but so many of you on my Facebook and my Twitter are sending me links and stories and links and stories and asking me in my opinion, asking me to do a video about this, so I am. We have several stories. First we have, well, not a story, but just a simple statement. George Bush said that he did not understand how in the world that the police in the Garner case, with video evidence, that the grand jury was unable to bring it just to trial to indict him. We have the police in Texas that shot the unarmed black man in January, and they have just come out with another grand jury that will not take him to trial. We have the police, the off-duty cops, the off-duty black cops saying that they are afraid of white cops because when they are off-duty, they are treated as common criminal thugs. So there is no blue line. If there was a such thing as a blue line, it would include black cops as well. And they are saying that that is not the case. We have the shooting of the boy close to Ferguson in another town, and the black mayor and the media made sure that you understood that he was a black mayor defending the police, saying that it was done in the line of duty. I'm going to wrap all of this up in just one part of the story, and that is the grand jury part of the story. People are asking, why aren't they indicting these police? When you go to a grand jury, you have two different sets of rules. One for all civilians, that's whether they be heads of corporations on down to the common criminal. And then you have one for police. And the one for the civilians, the prosecutor almost bears no burden to prove that the person in question should be tried. Not should be convicted, should be tried. So that's all they're looking for. Should the person in question be tried? The prosecution can bring to bear any and all evidence. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about grand jury in the case against a police officer. Right off the bat, there's snake in the oil. Why is that? Because the prosecutor and the police are on the same team. That means if the prosecutor were to bring to bear everything that needs to be brought to bear, all the evidence and what have you, the police will be indicted. Now, if he were to do that, he could not get the cooperation of the police. The police need the prosecutor to get the convictions when they arrest somebody. The prosecutor needs the police so that they can arrest people and bring them to court for him to prosecute so that he can continue having a job. If at any point this breaks down, you have a breakdown of the system. So, what am I saying? I'm saying that it is not in the best interest of a prosecutor to prosecute a police officer. Point blank. Now, some of you can say, oh, well, that's understandable. That is actually not his job. His job actually is not to cooperate with the police. His job isn't to defend police. His job is not to uphold murderous police and criminal policemen. That is not his job. His job is the exact opposite. He is to bring to bear all the power of the state, the city, and the state against the criminal, no matter who they are. Justice, quote unquote, is blind. He is supposed to bring everything that he possibly can. It's in his oath of office and every lawyer's oath of office when they take office. Even regular civilian lawyers take the same thing. Vigorously do your job. A prosecutor who holds back evidence and who does his best to not indict a crime, even if it's committed by a police officer, should be disbarred. Now, here's another plank in that oh so very murky water that we're dealing in on a daily basis. A police officer can bring a defense to the grand jury. A civilian cannot. How do you like them apples? So a police officer can bring to bear the entire police force, everything, as a defense. And there is an understanding that when arresting A police officer is understood to be able to bring force against a person. With that understanding, it's not a law. With that understanding, then you get into very murky waters when you say that he cannot bring this force. Now, clearly shooting unarmed black men is nowhere in the job description of a police officer, nor is it protected by his oath of office. These are criminals. In any court case, a judge will say, you, as a civilian, can bring to bear equal force to a fight to defend yourself. That's even to defend yourself against the government. Black man, 5 officers invaded his house. He shot and killed them all. Grand jury said absolutely nothing. I believe it went to grand jury. I believe it went to actual jury. Jury said no charges whatsoever. No crime was committed. He has every right to defend himself. And it was reasonable to assume that he was being invaded when the 5 policemen came into his house with guns. Black man, 5 white police. Don't ask me why 5 white police invaded his house. I don't know. I didn't really look at the story, but the outcome is all that I care about. The outcome is that he was completely freed. No charges, nothing on his record, completely freed, and killing each and every one of those 5 white policemen that came into his house, invaded his house. Case dismissed. In a civil case, civilian cannot bring any defense. A policeman can bring a defense. That is repugnant to the law. The law is supposed to be equal and even for everybody, no matter what office you hold, even the President of the United States. It is supposed to be that you are to be able to bring Congress or the presidency into court and sue them and for civil or criminal, whatever, and they would have the equal protection under the law as a civilian would have equal protection under the law. We're not talking about how much money they have. We're talking about what protections they have. Now, if a policeman is getting more protections under the law, that is unconstitutional. Is there some mystery what equal protection under the law actually means? But this, I'm just telling you, I'm educating you what is going on. When these police officers go into court in front of a grand jury, they can bring their mom, their doctor, the lawyer, the Indian chief, everybody to say, oh no, this is a fantastic guy, he would never do that, blah, blah. You are completely confused. Even with video evidence. It is now coming out in the prosecution, in the grand jury trial, in the Michael Brown case, the prosecutor brought witnesses who all perjured, meaning they told lies. One lady was brought up as a witness who was not a witness. She was not at the scene. She never even crossed the scene. She had not been in the scene, but she testified that she saw Michael Brown attacking the policeman. And in fact, it came out that every witness in the grand jury all perjured, and they were all not actual witnesses. And they all lied, right? That prosecutor should be stripped of his license to practice law, period. Everybody involved in that trial or in that proceeding should be stripped of their licenses as well, because it's not just one DA, it's the entire staff. They should all be stripped of their licenses. In the prosecution for the Eric Garner case, they did not see the video at all. That's where President Bush weighed in. He said that it's impossible to return a no indictment decision having seen the video. They didn't see the video. This is what's going on. And everybody rallying around police. I've told you in several of my other videos, I have had retired police, ex-police, police who quit the force, all of them saying that it has changed. The police force has changed, first of all. First of all, they're not protection. The idea of police, civilian police, is for protection. That has gone out the window, and police are now simply arms of corporations, the state, the city, to generate money. So it's not a case of protection anymore. They're used to generate money for the city, or the county, or the state, with the prisons. This all generates money. You all are gathering around police. It's just like my feelings on the U.S. military. I love the guys, the men and women in the U.S. military. I feel sorry for the men and women in the U.S. military because they are pawns in something that we keep calling national security. No, there hasn't been no defense of the U.S. Constitution since the Civil War. Every war thereafter have been wars of aggression, wars of greed. That is, corporations forcing the U.S. government to send troops into places that were unnecessary for any interest of the United States citizens. This whole notion that we're defending the U.S. Constitution and defending the petrodollar, and people are coming out and saying that we're defending the petrodollar, and that is a good thing to send military to defend the petrodollar. That is not a good thing. You can defend the petrodollar by making the petrodollar so staggeringly strong that the world will want and beg and plead to get into it. We're doing corporatism now, not capitalism. We're doing corporatism now. So now the corporations have seized the U.S. government, the federal government, and the local governments, and they have now enforced their will. The interest of the corporation is the interest of the state. But this isn't new. This dates back to the 1800s. This is not new. This is nothing new. Almost immediately at the inception of the country, corporations seized the government. The only thing is, the government was not as powerful back then. In 1913, the government was not as powerful. The New Deal brought on a whole bunch of more power to the federal government that was not there before. All this welfare and all that sort of stuff, and income tax, did you not know that the income tax was not, in fact, the Constitution completely speaks against it. But they made an amendment creating an income tax. And even then, at first it only applied to corporations. Then it went to rich people. And then the rich people said, why should we be the only ones to bear the brunt of this income tax? And it went to the upper middle class, then to the middle class, down to the lower middle class. And under Obama, the tax codes have been changed to include every red cent that anyone ever makes. That is President Obama. That is his real legacy. You're not being told his legacy. I feel for the U.S. military in that they are used as pawns in unconstitutional wars. They are actually unconstitutional. Wars and exercises that are started that are impeachable offenses under President Obama. This is all our U.S. military. The police are now militarized. And what does that mean? And that the whole idea of posse comitatus was that we did not want the military to come into the state. Why? Let's think about this. What's the history of the world? The Roman Empire did not want its military coming into the state. Why? Because the military is trained for one thing: to shoot and kill the enemy. If the police are militarized, it doesn't matter if they are U.S. Army. They are militarized police. They are trained to shoot and kill the enemy. Who is the enemy when the police are militarized? That's right, you who are watching this video. That is the state of affairs right now. You're trying to defend these police. These police are trained to kill you, even if you're white. Even if you're white. Let that sink in. There is a full-fledged war against black people now. Now, let's not get into a debate. There is a war. I'm telling you something now. There is a full-fledged war against black people. Full-fledged. On all fronts. Feminism, lesbianism, homosexuality, jail, police, media, politics, all fronts, all hands on deck. Full-fledged war. And the killing of black men, armed or unarmed or whatever, that is one grain of sand in this war. That's why I write on a lot of those news channels, who cares? Who even cares? This doesn't even matter. Until you change the policies against black people, this is nothing. If you can get black girls, black women, and by the way, black teenage female pregnancy is the lowest out of all groups. If you can get black women to voluntarily go into a Planned Parenthood and murder their unborn children, until you can stop that, it doesn't even matter. I told you in a previous video concerning that scientists have come out and said, we have come to a conclusion that in the human genome, every 100,000 humans, one is a genius. Black women have murdered 50 million babies, black babies. I want you to do the math right quick and tell me how many black geniuses have been murdered, all in the name of, and for you who say, oh, well, they don't need to have children. They can't afford them. I want to hearken you back to 1800, the year 1800, the year 1800. Thousands of poor white trash came to these shores, and they were put to work, and they had tons of babies, and the rich white people were overjoyed. Why? Because human capital was necessary. Everybody says we don't understand why black people aren't successful, because we don't have human capital. I need people to work for me. I'm trying to do all of these projects, my investing, everything, all by myself. I need about 50 people to work for me. And then maybe I could do all this stuff that I want to do. The wealth of a nation is born on the backs of human capital. Why do you think they're fighting tooth and nail to get these illegal aliens into the country? And why are they fighting tooth and nail to say, oh, they're legal, they're legal, they're legal? It's human capital. They have given up on blacks because blacks don't produce. Blacks don't produce. Our birth rate is near white people's. Whose birth rate is up? Latinos. I'm sorry, Mexicans. Let's not mince words here. The Mexican birth rate in the United States is the only one that is securely positive. That means that for every adult Mexican that dies through whatever means, including being shot by the police, 3 or 4 are born. That is human capital. If you don't understand that, you just don't want to educate yourself. Every country in the world that wants to progress has to have human capital. That includes poor people. And the more poor people, the better. For every one middle class job, there are 10 lower class jobs. For every one middle class job, upper class job, there are 10 middle class jobs. So for every upper class job, there are 100 lower class jobs. That means that we need what? More poor people. And here's something shocking, probably that you've never heard. The overwhelming majority, like 90% of women on welfare across the board, white, black, Latino, Asian. I don't know if Native Americans are even can't even collect. The overwhelming majority have 1 child. So this whole they need to abort, I don't want to have to pay for them does not even apply. It doesn't apply. Because for every person on welfare, I believe there's 10 single parents, single moms, single dads, what have you, with one child. I believe there's like 100 of those. So what you're screaming at, what you're being taught, you're bred to fear this stuff because you don't know economics, you don't know the reality, and you don't know your stats. You're taught to be afraid of black people. You're taught that black people shouldn't breed. Black people shouldn't have children. Even the women voluntarily going into the Planned Parenthood and going to murder their children are taught that it's horrible to have a child. But here's the catch. There's almost no generational poverty in the United States. Almost none. It doesn't exist. What is generational poverty? Let's go back to England. All those white peoples, for generation, they were serfs. You didn't have to be a serf in England. You could have an idea, become a merchant, start a trade, and become rich. So in like 2 generations, your family then became rich. You were a merchant. You weren't a noble, but you were a merchant. You didn't have to be poor. But most of the white people in England for hundreds and thousands of years in that area were poor. Generation after generation after generation. In the United States, you could be 18 and by the age of 30, you could be middle class. And that's how it happens for nearly 90% of the population, if not more. A person who's poor 10 years ago is not poor today. You can almost say that without even listening to the person, even knowing anything about the person. They can say, I was poor 10 years ago. You can point your finger and say, you're not poor today, are you? No, I'm not. Because our economy progresses. Humans interacting progresses, and we become wealthier and wealthier year after year after year. Nobody stays poor. You're bred to hate black people. You're bred to think that black people shouldn't breed. You think it's a fantastic idea for black people to use condoms. And all the while I'm screaming out, black people get married and have children. Have 5 children if you possibly can. If you can afford it. Now, why do I say if you can afford it? I say if you can afford it today. Keep living. I don't know how long you've been married. If you were married for 20 years, you could space that out and you could all have 5 children. Yes, it's possible if you are fastidious and very productive at your job. And just keep living, you'll get richer. If you're smart and open up a business. I say the solution is that black people need to go their own way. You want to go their own way solution? A group? Black people need to go their own way. How about a BGOTW? Black people, a BPGOTW. Black people going their own way. That's the new hashtag. Everybody use it. We'll formulate our own cities, have our own black police. I told you about the black police. Have your own black mayor. Have your own black businesses inside of your black community. That's the way to do it. And I notice when I say that, white people, come out the I am a Time Lord, you will obey me. You can't go your own way. Black people need to go your own way. Jews go their own way. Mormons go their own way. The Amish, not only do they go their own way, laws don't even apply to them. Did you know that? They have gone their own way so much that they are an isolated group inside of the United States. Are they racist? No, but me saying black people need to go their own way is somehow racist. This grand jury thing, don't be confused by it. And if any of you have balls, you should ask the bar of the state, the legal bar that licenses attorneys in the state, to strip the license of these prosecutors who are not doing their job. Now, can you do that? Yes. Can you find a bar that's going to adhere to that? You would have to find a bar with a whole bunch of honest lawyers on it. I'm not even trying to be smart, but that's a pretty smart saying, right? You would have to find a bar with a whole bunch of noble, honest, just lawyers. Technically, you can find them, right? I'm not a lawyer because I'm honest, just, and I couldn't stand the system. I actually interviewed for firms before I was to leave law school, my last year. I cannot stand the process. I cannot stand the profession. I can't stand it. I would probably do much more good than I am doing now, but for my sanity and my peace of mind, I didn't want to become a lawyer. There you go. Anyway, these are questions that you need to ponder. Thank you for watching the Shikama Live Show.